Hello, the title of this lecture is The Rise and Decline of the Roman Republic. The achievement of the Romans were impressive. From its Italian base, its conquest of the Mediterranean world was remarkable, but the Romans did not stop there. Historians divide Roman history into the periods of the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire. The Republic began the trend towards political and legal universalism. Located on the Italian peninsula that extends about 750 miles, Rome was founded in 753 BC. The city was 18 miles inland on the Tiber River. It had access to the sea, but it was safe from pirates. The Roman people were of Indo-European ancestry. They were an agricultural people who valued private property, but over the course of Roman expansion, the Romans showed greater concern with military and administrative affairs. Interestingly, as economic historian Rondo Cameron argues, commerce did not rate highly in the Roman system of values. It was left in the hands of inferior social classes, foreigners, and even slaves. End of quote. With an act of revolution, the Romans overthrew the Etruscans, people from a region north of Rome. And this was in 509 BC. And in this year, there was the establishing of a republic, that is a form of democracy that allowed citizens to elect representatives to run the government. A republic or a republica literally means the people's thing. It had democratic features, but this early political arrangement was not a true democracy of the people. It was an ordered liberty, freedom within the framework of the Roman Constitution. The Roman Republic had councils and praetors to administer the government. The council carried out executive duties such as proposing laws. There was also a Senate consisting of about 300 members who served the Republic for life. Also, there were various assemblies. Only the patricians or noble families held power at this time, but gradually the plebeian or common people were able to participate in the government as well. The Roman Constitution offered a type of checks and balances of power. The Roman assembly alone had the power to pass laws. Most of the early years of the Republic were spent defending the rich farmland from invaders. Compulsory military service was used in defense against aggressive neighbors. Responding to the threat of enemies, Roman leaders began to fight for control of the Italian peninsula early in the 5th century BC. They annexed the southern part of Etruria, and they conquered the central region and the Greek settlements. Eventually, the Romans took control of all of Italy by the year 265 BC. The Romans won the loyalty of conquered peoples by allowing them to keep most of their land, their customs, local government, and laws. This was similar to what Alexander the Great had done during his conquest of Persia and other lands. The Romans adopted money later than the Greeks, who had coins in approximately 600 BC. So the Romans were a little late on this issue. Now, as was the case for any early civilization, a good money system facilitated trade and production. Economies functioning without a coinage system were at a disadvantage. Barter was awkward and inefficient. For example, if you were a Roman artisan who made chairs and you desired apples, it would make no sense to trade one chair for one apple. In fact, you might not want to trade your chair for a large number of apples. There were the issues of having adequate storage space and even preserving the apples. Discussing the role of money, economist Thomas Sowell explains, quote, "But if chairs and apples can be both exchanged for some third thing that can be subdivided into very small units, then more trades can take place using the intermediary means of exchange, benefiting both the chair makers and apple growers as well as everyone else. All that people have to do is agree on what will be used as an intermediary means of exchange, and that means that means of exchange becomes money." The acceptance of coinage contributed to genuine wealth creation. As an artifact, coinage transferred wealth and gave people incentive to produce wealth. And I think when we look at the early Roman Republic, I think they needed all of the assistance they could get in regards to generating wealth. War stands out in the history of the Roman Republic. The first Punic Wars marked Rome's first territorial conquest out of Italy. Carthage was a colony planted in northern Africa by the Phoenician city of Tyre in the 9th century. The Phoenicians were skillful sailors, and there is a suggestion that they may have circumnavigated the continent of Africa. By the 6th century, the Carthaginians began to build their own empire. The city itself had the advantage of a superb harbor, and there were ample slaves to work the rich lands in the region. In time, the Carthaginians controlled Western Sicily, and there were additional seeds of conflict with the Romans when the Carthaginians claimed exclusive rights to trade in the Western Mediterranean. Rome had its eye on Carthage, a commercial republic, for two reasons. Carthage controlled the islands of Sicily and Sardinia, a source of much needed wheat for a growing Roman population. And second, the Carthaginian navy posed a threat to the western plains of Italy and hindered trade along the west coast of the peninsula. The name of the wars between Carthage and the Romans, as I mentioned earlier, were the Punic Wars. And this comes from the word punicus, which is the Latin term for Carthaginian. The first Punic War took place from 264 to 241 BC. The Romans broke a treaty with Carthage and invaded Sicily. They were more powerful on land. They were certainly more powerful on land, but had to redesign and refurbish their navy to eventually claim victory in sea battles. So the Romans had to do their homework as far as preparing themselves for any sea battles. The Romans equipped their boats with hooks so that troops could jump over and fight on the enemy's deck. However, the conflict was a war of attrition. This first Punic War was a war of attrition. It was not until 241 that the Carthaginians admitted defeat and relinquished Sicily and their island holdings between Sicily and Italy. The Second Punic War was from the year 218 to the year 202 BC. Roman writers repeated stories that the Carthaginians, in supreme moments of crisis, threw their first child alive into the fires of the temple. One story, perhaps not told too often, was the account of the father of a 9-year-old boy named Hannibal. As the story goes, the father held his son over the fire and said, "Do you swear eternal hatred of Rome? Do you swear to spend your life destroying the power of Rome?" And as the story goes, the boy answered yes. Hannibal grew up to become a Phoenician commander in Spain who moved his troops north up the Spanish coast and threatened independent cities and Roman trade. He then organized a force of 40,000 infantry, 8,000 cavalry, and 60 elephants to make a surprise attack on the Italians from the north. And he would do this by traveling through the Alps. Quite a remarkable feat. Hannibal won many battles with the Romans. The Carthaginian forces had a stunning victory in Cannae in the year 216. Estimates put the death toll as high as 80,000 Romans. Hannibal's forces moved toward Rome, but the Carthaginians were unable to conquer the city because its walls were too strong. I should point out that historians argue that the Romans made a serious blunder long before Hannibal's campaign. You see, the Romans had allowed the Carthaginians to rebuild their empire after the First Punic War and made no defensive planning for a possible attack by the Carthaginians. For a decade after the initial victories by Hannibal, the Romans chose not to directly confront him. So Hannibal was in Italy for 14 years. The Romans held on behind their walled cities that Hannibal failed to breach. With Hannibal still in Italy, Scipio, a daring Roman commander, moved his troops from Spain into North Africa in 204 to attack Carthage. Hannibal was ordered home to defend Carthage, only to face defeat at Zama in the year 202 BC. Carthage was forced to give up its territory outside of Africa and reduce its navy. The Third Punic War was from 149 to 146 BC. Once again, Carthage began to prosper, and the Roman senators believed that the city needed to be destroyed. The Romans proposed that the busy port city be moved inland, but the Carthaginians refused this impossible request. After a 3-year siege, the Romans captured the city and destroyed it. Romans were now in control of northern Africa. So the period that follows is where we see the decline of the Republic. As Rome grew outside the Italian peninsula, it was facing internal power struggles between the powerful and common people. Many citizen farmers returning from military service lost their land because of increased competition from wealthy landowners, cheap grain from the new colonies, and excessive taxation. They also competed for jobs with tens of thousands of slaves pouring into Rome from the conquered territories. These restless and dissatisfied citizens turned to the government for help, but the response was unsatisfactory. The Senate pursued the interests of the powerful and kept this, quote, mob under control. There were two leaders from an aristocratic family who tried to help the common masses. Although there is the argument that at least one of them was rather self-serving in his endeavors. Well, the first was what we have with these two individuals. Both were tribunes, and they were officials, again, elected by an assembly to protect plebeians from patrician abuse. Tiberius tried in the year 133 BC to change the system of land distribution in Rome, but the Senate withheld the necessary funds. He and many of his followers were murdered. As one historian writes, the Senate beat back the threat to its rule, but at the price of the first internal bloodshed in Rome's political history. 10 years later, Gaius Gracchus attempted to take the law courts out of the jurisdiction of the Senate and grant citizenship to Rome's Italian allies. There were a number of other things that he was doing that did not make the Senate happy, but this was one that would cause him, definitely cause him trouble. And that was because many of the Roman common people opposed this move of granting citizenship to these allies. And what the threat was that this would decrease the power of Roman citizens, the power of their votes. More citizens would dilute the voting power of the common masses. Powerful Roman leaders took advantage of the situation and killed Gaius and 3,000 of his supporters. Gaius is the individual who some historians argue was rather self-serving in his actions, and he was not really all that interested in democracy. Well, what follows in subsequent decades were civil war. The first civil war in 88 BC, Marius, who was elected to the council by the assembly, reorganized the army, making it easier for men to enlist and making military service a full-time career option. Professional armies emerged with soldiers becoming loyal to their generals instead of the state. Now, Sulla, S-U-L-L-A, was Marius' aristocratic rival, and he fought for the interests of the Senate, and he conquered Marius' forces after the death of Marius, Marius was old, he was in his 70s. Sulla declared himself dictator and reorganized the government to revive the power of the Senate. Sulla's action resulted in the killing of a large number of Romans. Behind his purge was the claim that he was killing enemies of the state. The Second Civil War took place in 79 to 49 BC. Crassus and Pompey were two commanders in Sulla's army who fought for control after Sulla's death. Each had his own military conquest that he hoped would win public favor and support. The Senate commissioned Pompey to end the slave rebellion and its leader Spartacus, a gladiator. So this is a response to Spartacus, who was a gladiator who had led a slave rebellion. By the year 62 BC, Pompey's power was unmatched. Julius Caesar, nephew of Marius, was more popular than Crassus and Pompey, but still did not have enough power to assume complete control of Rome as he wished. In 60 BC, these three formed a triumvirate. 7 years later, Crassus died and the power relation fell apart. Caesar, in the meantime, had built an army that rivaled Pompey's. Eventually, the battle came down to Pompey and Caesar, with Caesar becoming the victor and sole ruler of Rome. His opponents feared that Caesar wanted to set up a monarchy. Many senators saw that it was their duty to stop Caesar, and in 44 BC, a number of senators assassinated him. The death of Caesar did not restore any stability to the Republic. What followed was another civil war. During the Third Civil War, Octavian, Caesar's nephew, and Mark Antony avenged Caesar's death and agreed to split the Roman world. Octavian ruled the western half, Antony the east. This was only a temporary measure, as each wanted to be in complete control. Octavian convinced the Roman peoples that Antony was a pawn of Cleopatra, the queen of Egypt. In 31 BC, Octavian's navy defeated Antony's army at Actium, off the western coast of Greece. Antony and Cleopatra committed suicide. Octavian became the first emperor of Rome, and his rule marked the end of the 500-year-old republic and the beginning of the Roman Empire. Roman history began with a small community in central Italy. After the Romans conquered all of Italy, they looked elsewhere. Although the Roman Republic grew, it did not last. 3 points that summarizes the decline of the Roman Republic. First, the Roman armies overextended their resources, and the process of empire building had weakened the stability of Rome. Second, there was dissatisfaction among the lower classes brought about by landlessness. Small farmers found it difficult to compete with large landowners who had many slaves. And finally, there was much political corruption. The maneuvering of senators and those seeking power was violent. There was no shortage of ambitious, power-hungry senators and generals, particularly generals. And in the end, the Republic could not sustain itself with all the internal instability. Thank you.